Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I'm glad they invented the internet because now I'm able to say I haven't got the bandwidth and people understand what I mean. I've got 7 grandkids, the majority of whom are 3 and under, and they're all here with me up north with the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt. So I haven't got the bandwidth to keep up with my friend Eli Lake, who is a contributor to the Free Press. He's also the host of Breaking History, one of the great podcasts out there. And the new Breaking History is about Russia, 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 which Eli taped with Josh Hammer. Now, I haven't had time to listen to it yet. I have glanced over and seen headlines that there's news about Russia, 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 but I really don't have any time. I'm focused on Israel and trade, Eli. What do I need to know, and do I need to listen to this and ought everyone to care about Russia, Russia, Russia? What's going on?
There have been, in the last 2 weeks, a series of declassifications that, for journalists like myself, who have been covering this story very closely now for going on almost a decade, are really interesting and revealing. I'm not where Matt Taibbi and a couple other journalists at the Federalist are. I don't think these are, super bombshells. I'm critical, or I should say, I don't think that it was wise to imply that Barack Obama had been part of a treasonous conspiracy. As we both know, treason is the one crime defined in the Constitution. I don't think it meets that. But all of that said, I think the latest disclosure, which was on Wednesday, is really important. It's the in the following sense, it's the declassification of an annex to John Durham's 2023 report. It gets into some very tantalizing intelligence that he doesn't quite know what to make heads or tails of. But the one takeaway that you see in this annex is that the FBI got intelligence from a source that said a number of things, including that Loretta Lynch, who was then the Attorney General, was regularly briefing a senior person on the Hillary Clinton campaign about the status of the investigations into Hillary Clinton. Um, that may end up being hearsay and not true, but the point is that there was zero investigation into this piece of intelligence.
Now, pause and
Compare
repeat what
that.
it was that the Attorney
It
General of the
was
United States. Go ahead, tell me.
there were two reports from a source for the FBI, who was what appears to be a Russian national. And what it said was that based on hacked emails, Loretta Lynch, who was the Attorney General, was briefing a member of Hillary Clinton's campaign on the status of the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton, which is a huge
Wow.
conflict of interest. As you probably remember, just one meeting between Lynch and Bill Clinton was enough
On the
to
tarmac. Yeah.
on the tarmac. That was it. So that's an explosive allegation. It's kind of been known, but now we see the actual report. It's finally declassified. And it also said that Hillary had developed a plan much earlier than we thought, starting in the beginning of 2016, to smear Trump with ties to Russia as a way to deflect from her own email scandal, which was obviously a big thing in 2016. This piece of intelligence, these two pieces of intelligence, as I say, John Durham, who I trust, says he can't determine whether they were real or not, and he gets into extensive, evidence in this annex about who he's interviewed, and various people at the FBI thought different things. But my takeaway is that this was not investigated by the FBI, and it's part of a pattern, Hugh. Meaning, there were a lot of investigations, not just the emails, in 2016 into Hillary Clinton. There was investigations into the Clinton Foundation. There was an investigation that started in 2014 into a foreign donor who wanted to influence the election by giving a lot of money, through other kind of dummy donors to Hillary Clinton's campaign. These investigations were slow walked. In some cases, they were shut down. No aggressive steps were taken during the election. Compare that to the turn over every rock, find whatever you can, whatever sticks approach to investigating the Trump campaign. And then compare that to Jim Comey's decision to confirm that there was an investigation into the Trump campaign in March of 2017, when in fact, at that point, we know from previous reports from the Inspector General of the Justice Department and Durham himself that the FBI had nothing, that the investigation should have been shut down, and that there were senior FBI agents who had tried to shut it down and recommended closing these investigations into the sitting president. So that to me is the story. That's the scandal in a nutshell. There was a double standard
All
when it
right.
came to Trump in 2016.
We will come back, and during the break, I'm going to talk with Eli about whether or not. I don't think we should kick this over again because there's another scandal with Joe Biden and his senility that we really ought to talk about. But going back to 2016, the statute's run on everything except John Brennan's testimony to Congress. I'm going to ask Eli about that during the break, and then we're going to come back for 4 or 5 minutes with Eli on Israel's dilemma. Don't go anywhere. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I am back now with Eli Lake. Eli, I said going into the break, I want to ask you. I don't want to go any further into 2016, except for Brennan's testimony in 2023, because the statute of limitations has run on everything else. What's your position on that?
My position is that unless there's a really shocking revelation, then I think it would be best to sort of accept that, in the end, Trump secured his vengeance by winning the 2024 election. And I'd like to get out of the lawfare business. I think it was a disgraceful thing when, the investigations were politicized against Trump and that politics were criminalized under Biden with Trump. And I don't think that that's how we resolve our political disputes in this country. And I think that I think that the Trump administration should sort of take the higher ground. I know that I might be talking into the void there, but I just think it would be better for the republic.
No, I make
that
the
we get
same
out of
argument.
this. Yeah.
Unless they got Brennan cold on lying to Congress.
Yeah.
I mean cold. I would leave it alone.
Right.
Now, Eli, in terms of the investigation into Biden, about which we don't know much, what do you think about that one?
That is a scandal. It needs to be addressed. Absolutely. And it's because the auto pen stuff, those were auto pen signatures for kind of almost blanket clemencies for lots of people. And if the president wasn't fully there, I think the American people need to know this. I think that there needs to be reforms. And to me, I can't stop thinking about this scandal. It's like we sort of already knew, and everything coming out is confirming it. But that's scary. The idea that the president was making these kinds of decisions. And you remember at the time, some of them didn't add up. Like, how did this person get them? There were people who looked like they shouldn't have gotten the pardons and the clemency at the time, I remember. And Biden apparently wasn't there. These were done by the auto pen.
He was run by
Absolute
staff, and it does
Yeah.
shock me. And I got Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson on the program, and we walked through the book. I'm not interested in Jake's double standard and whatever people say. I'm interested in the fact that everybody knew. That's in Jake's book. Everybody knew.
Yeah.
At fundraiser after fundraiser and event after event and meeting after meeting, Congress,
That book
senators,
is more. By
representatives.
the way, that book is more damning than the critics have said. I think it's very damaging to.
Well, that's
Biden
why I
and
went. I did my interview with him. I went through it piece by piece, and Mark Halperin got mad at me for not yelling at Jake Tapper. I don't care. I want to know. I want people to know what's in there. It's a damning book. It's really good.
I agree with you. It is
Stand,
right. Yeah.
stand by, Eli. We're coming back to talk Israel.
Okay.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Eli Lake is my guest. He's the host of the Breaking History podcast, which is fabulous. He's a contributor to the Free Press, where he's a columnist, which is great. You ought to subscribe to the Free Press. They signed Haviv Reddy-Gur as their chief Middle Eastern correspondent this week, which is a great thing. I had Haviv on the show this week. And Eli and I agree, by the way, that Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson's book is very, 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 very explosive, and people ought to read it no matter what they think of Alex or Jake, because it's just got the details on Joe Biden's decline that nobody else has. Now, Eli, what Haviv said, and I wanted to get your reaction to, is we are at the critical juncture, we, including the United States and Israel. Do they destroy Hamas, or do they stop the war until the hostages get out, which will be in 20 years? Or do they carry on the war and destroy Hamas at the risk of the hostages, all 20, dying? Haviv said Hamas must be destroyed. What do you say?
I think, sadly, it's a tough choice, but I think you have to destroy Hamas. I think it's very important. I want to just commend you. That was just such an illuminating interview with Haviv Reddy-Gur, who is brilliant on these things and is so thoughtful, and I think he has so much integrity. And you did a great job of sort of teasing out all this stuff. I thought it was great. It was great. You covered a lot of ground. I recommend everybody watching the clip on YouTube. It's like 45 minutes. Terrific.
Well, thank you. Haviv is Michael Oren and Haviv are my go-to guys. Amit Segal
They're
might
great.
join them for Israelis because they actually do wrestle with the issues and they have big hearts. They don't want Gaza to
Yeah.
suffer. But, you know, Gaza's never going to get anywhere if they've got 15,000 terrorists left after 30,000 of them have been killed. There's still 15,000, even if they're teenagers with guns. They're going to run the place if Israel withdraws. Do you agree with that?
I would say this 2 months ago, I had a glimmer of hope when you saw videos from Gaza of, and you still can find these, lots of Gazans blaming Hamas for this catastrophic decision to sacrifice the civilians they purport to govern in the name of their sort of forever jihad against Israel. And I think that average Gazans, it would be great if there was some way that they could throw off the remnants of Hamas themselves. And in that respect, that's the kind of solution that I'd like to see. And I think that it's less knowable than some of the experts, especially in Washington, have said, because I don't think we can possibly know in a fear-based society like Gaza what people really think. But we do have a lot of evidence in that regard. But that said, you can't have Hamas still standing, and it's really significant in this very bad week for Israel with the French and the English and the British, saying they're going to recognize a Palestinian state, which is meaningless but also dangerous because it sort of rewards Hamas for October 7th. You also had the Arab League statement with Qatar, importantly, saying it's time for Hamas to leave, relinquish power, and disarm, and blaming them for the catastrophe of October 7th. You could say, okay, that's nearly 2 years too late, but at the same time, I'll take it. That is a really significant thing. And it's interesting that the Arabs are much more kind of tethered to reality than the kind of Democrats in American politics and the Europeans who claim to be in solidarity with Palestinians are.
Oh,
We're in a
it's
very
such a
interesting
deep
moment.
crisis in the West. People don't realize what a crisis in the West it is.
Yeah.
Israel's our strategic ally. It's the strategic ally. It is part of the West, and the West is dividing over this left wing craziness. Eli, my last question is a personal one.
Yeah.
I'm not Jewish. I'm not an Israeli. You're not an Israeli. You're Jewish. How often do you think about the hostages in the tunnel? I try and remember them every day, but I just don't know what it's doing to the psyche of American Jewry as well as Israelis.
Well, I'm close to it because I cover it, so I think about them a lot. I don't know if it's every day, but I do think about the hostages, and it can make you crazy because you feel helpless. You know that there's a kind of real cruelty to this organization, and they delight in it and they advertise it. I'm thinking of that horrible ceremony where they had the coffins for the two Bebas children, or they lied to that one father and they, said you're going to meet your wife when they'd already knew that they'd slaughtered her. These are people who specialize in both physical and psychological torture, and to know that there are these innocents who are still suffering there um, is a heavy, heavy burden a lot of times, and I can only imagine how Israelis feel or how Benjamin Netanyahu feels. I think he probably feels this really deeply, and
Yeah, they're the closest thing to the Dementors that kids raised
yeah,
on Harry Potter will realize that's Hamas. They are psychopaths, and my gosh, they can't be
yes,
left in power. Eli Lake, follow him on X at Eli Lake. Read him in the Free Press, and make sure you listen to Breaking History. Part 2 on Iran is coming up soon. Do not miss that. Eli, thank you. It's always good to talk to you on a Friday.